Hello, and welcome to Healthy Ships to the Curb. My name is Stephanie McPhail. I am one of your hosts for this amazing show that we do every single week for all of you for the past 3 years. My co-host Steve is hopefully going to be coming on and sharing the stage with us, but he's off doing some wonderful, amazing things. So he is not going to make it on time today, but we do have a really great show for you today. We're going to be speaking to someone that I know personally named Gemma. She is in a kind of a similar niche as what I do, in the focus being creating healthy relationships, is for those women who have been in those toxic relationships and really helping to guide them. She actually has this really great podcast that she does, these interviews that she does to allow women to share their stories to make them feel less alone. So I'm going to welcome right now Gemma to the stage. I'm going to read first her intro. Gemma is a highly educated and award-winning entrepreneur, nominated for the 2023 Women of Inspiration Award and voted Business Person of the Year for 2022. She is the founder and host of the global top 10% podcast, Real Talk, Real Women, Breaking the Silence Around Abuse, where she interviews other strong, powerful, and visionary women to share their stories of overcoming abuse, to inspire victims hiding in plain sight to see the light on the other side and to break free from the abuse. Gemma received her education from some of the top universities in the world, including IMD, MIT, NYU, and Kellogg Northwestern University. She is passionate about empowering women to experience healthy relationships, business, and media. In addition to her work as a podcast host, Gemma is also an advocate for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. She uses her platform to raise awareness about the prevalence of abuse in our society and to provide resources and support for those who've experienced trauma. Gemma is a dynamic and inspiring leader who is committed to making the world a better place for everybody concerned. Welcome, Gemma, to our show. So good to have you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm so thrilled to be here today. Such an
Thank you.
important topic.
It is. And I love that we get to kind of share some of our background and expertise and really get to give a very unique perspective for those people who might be hiding in plain sight, because I know that it's a passion of ours, especially, and I'll speak for myself, but knowing how many women that are so successful in other areas of their lives and feel so disempowered to share about what they've experienced when it comes to domestic violence and sexual assault. And so, I love your vision. I love all the great things you're doing to support women. So to start off, I know your story, but all of our viewers don't. So I'd love for you to share what got you so passionate about helping other women to heal and thrive after these toxic relationships.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking. It's such an inspiring story, and this is why I'm so passionate about that. I am Gemma Serenity, and I am victorious over 15 years of domestic violence. Beaten, put down, raped, almost killed twice by strangulation. There was two different stories. One time 5 years, one time 10 years. At the end of the second story, I honestly couldn't take it anymore. I did everything I could to break free. I was able to recognize the abuse, but when I tried, that same night, I was back home as if I did not leave. I did not understand, and that time was the one too many for me. Decided to simply throw in the towel, call it a life, check out, and done. So at that moment in time, I'm living on the 10th floor of the apartment building, and I'm very clear and blunt. Well, that's radical. You let your body crash and you let your spirit go in the heaven, and we'll deal with that with God or whoever is in the spiritual realm at that moment in time. And sure enough, nobody knew what I was doing except the spiritual realm, who is constantly watching over us. We may feel alone, we may feel stuck, but let me tell you, we are not. I heard a voice, and there is no physical body, no physical being around me. I'm alone in this room. I have already opened the window. I'm already almost on the other side. And that voice tells me, of course you can jump. It's going to work. but I'm going to give you the same life in worse. Is that really what you want?
Mm.
So think about that a second, Stephanie. When you hear that, you hear, I acknowledge you have the power to break it all. You have the power to interrupt it all. Then there is that preview of upcoming attraction. These are the consequences. Are you ready to deal with those consequences? Because it's not what you think.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine my answer like, no? Okay, so leave by the door, told me the voice. I understand this voice as being God's voice because the only one who gives life is God. So that is my train of thought. And the other element that make me believe that it is God is how feel good, loved, acknowledged, appreciated I felt in that presence.
Mm-hmm.
And the sound I heard, I did not hear it with my physical ear. I try to say I heard it through my bones. So it is also at a different level, a level I cannot just like stop my ears and not hear. I cannot not hear that. Because of those elements, I say it's God. Now it's 1:30 a.m. That day is June 15, 2013, living in Geneva, Switzerland. And now I hear, okay, so if all of that is not what you want, leave by the door, not by the window, right? What I want to tell you is this. Suicide is not an option, is not an exit, it's not a relief. It's a abandon on yourself. You abandon yourself, you give up on yourself
Mm-hmm.
and on your healing and on your ability to receive the greatness of life. And you don't have to go to that point. When you feel that you have no step further, dare to do the impossible. As an example, leave by the door. This is what I did. Middle of the night, 1:30 a.m. I'm alone. I did not take my children with me. I did not take any physical thing, tracking device, money, anything with me. Because honestly, when you withdraw yourself from domestic violence, when you escape, when you flee, you don't need those things.
Mm-hmm.
You are just basically saving your own life and done. From that moment, it can happen anything. I could have died just right after unexpectedly. But this is not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I suddenly, after 10, 15 minutes of running nowhere, I remember a good man's address whom I met 2 weeks prior and who lost his mother to suicide by jumping from the seventh floor of their apartment building. And I did help him and support him during the shock of having like, hey, you have your mother and she's dead down there. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird. And however, I was still stuck in that same place where I did consider my own exit that way. So you can be that, you can support, and you can also be in such a bad place emotionally. That man happens to have become my third, last, and dream husband, an angel in flesh to teach me what healthy relationship feels like, what being loved, being adored, being empowered, being recognized, live in harmony, agree to disagree. Have a healthy mechanism that when it's too much, we can scream not at each other, but just let the steam out, listen to each other, acknowledge each other, and then work out something to actually continue together, which is a healthy way of dealing with explosion when we are as human. Sometimes we get angry,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's too much, which is okay. And what I came to understand is that domestic violence is often linked with a mental disease, something with the behavior, the mental plane that does not go right, something with beliefs, with values that is not right and that allows belittling, putting down, beating up, raping, doing things that without consent. And this is very much mental health disorder. Indeed, you have the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 800-273-8255. You have options to call someone always. It's available.
Now, Gemma, I know that, and first of all, thank you so much for sharing and being so vulnerable and open with our audience and sharing, how low things got for you. And I think that a lot of times people don't understand why it took getting to that point. We all have our moments. We all have that breaking point where enough is enough. And, it's interesting because my breaking point was hearing also a voice, something inside of me saying, you were put here for more, stop waiting for your own knight in shining armor and do it. Make a difference. There's been something in common all along. You can make a difference. And that was my moment for me in the hospital, in the emergency room. And so everyone has their breaking moment. Why do you think people, because this happens to men as well, but why do you think people stay so long and allow themselves to get to such a low point before they finally decide to put themselves first and give themselves a chance at having something better for themselves?
Because we are loyal. Because we made a promise. Because we made a vow. Because we absolutely are certain of ourselves. This is going to be for the rest of my life until death do us part. For the best and for the worst. Well, it's the worst. So what? I promised. How many times did I think that?
I agree. And it's interesting how often women feel so strongly about that. And the female tends to hold on so tightly. And again, there are men in these relationships as well. And I do mostly focus on women. So that is my experience. But it seems like there's always one partner that's trying so hard to make it work and stick by them and try to get, they try to work on themselves and figure out what the problem is and make changes on themselves and all of that. And then there's the other partner that doesn't change anything and doesn't feel like they have to because they put all the blame on the person. There's no behavior at all. Did I lose you for a second?
Yes, I tried to hear and then no more.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. So there always seems to be one person in the partnership that is trying way harder than the other one. And then there's one that doesn't take any responsibility whatsoever and keeps blaming the other person for their bad behavior. Do you find that as well?
Yes, I did find that as well. And this is also how I can really say that when there is domestic violence, there is some mental disorder, some mental health issues that are completely part of the equation. And we rarely, I was 17 years old when I started this domestic violence thing. What do I know about psychology and mental health? What do I know? I knew nothing. I could absolutely see that he had some serious mental health issues, but what was that? I don't know. And all I knew as a Christian little girl is that, well, everybody is meant to be loved and to have a family. So let's make a family together. It's not because you have some behavior issues that you should not be loved. Let's have a kid together. And I have a kid from him. He's 25 years old.
It's interesting. And I like what you said. Who thinks they need to have a psychology degree to start a relationship? But now that's a thought. I didn't know anything about psychology. Well, we shouldn't have to be in a relationship, but we don't see it, especially when we're younger. and a lot of times when we're older too, if we haven't healed, if we haven't done ourselves, then sometimes we still don't see it. We miss the red flags, or we see the red flags as potential fixing that we can do on that person and to make them into something more than what they are. But then it's us again trying to make the other person better.
Mm-hmm. The truth is that we can make ourselves better.
Mm-hmm.
That is the truth. We can change our own behavior. We can change our own limiting belief and our own vision of the world. We cannot change the other person's view of the world, even though we can influence it. If the other person allows it, it takes two. You cannot just do it on someone who does not give you his or her consent.
Yeah, agreed. And I think what a lot of people don't understand either when listening to these stories of abuse is that, there's different levels of abuse. And so a lot of the times there is like stage 4 cancer is physical abuse, is the really tough physical abuse. But then there's all sorts of stuff in between. There is, the name calling, and there's pushing. I mean, there's all these things that are under it. So, and we hardly ever, I mean, if you went on a first date with someone and they started with the violence, whether it's emotional, physical, whatever it is on the first date, you'd be like, see you later. But just like what you saw, you said, oh, somebody has a mental health issue. Okay, not a big deal. They're a nice person. We get along well. I'm in love with them. Not a big deal. I see some of the things, but I can deal with it. But we start becoming acclimated to how they are, and then they start pushing the boundaries. Have you noticed that, where it's like a little, let me go a little bit above the boundary and push a little bit more, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, how did I get here when I started off by having love and compassion and all this greatness in the beginning of it? And now here I am protecting myself from my life.
Yeah. I remember the first time I was hit by my second one. The first one was crazy anyway, so I knew it from the get-go, even though I didn't know how it would go. With the second one, I remember the first time I got hit. And it was already 3 or 4 years in the relationship. It did not happen from the get-go. And that plays back and that chimes into what you were just mentioning. And I remember that when I was hit one time, was so upset at me because I did not respect the rules we just established. I did not respect that. We said, okay, not there. And what did I do? There. Like, okay. I mean, I understand that what I did was wrong, but I don't understand that as an answer, I was hit in the face. He was so upset. And he didn't want to disfigure me or to destroy me or to break my skin. He wanted to wake me up and to really bring his point across that it was an absolute no. And I was there. What do I do with that? Mm-hmm. I just did wrong. I recognize I just did wrong. I was physically punished. That sounds wrong to me as well. So we both are wrong on that one. So now what? And I remember that I was exactly. And now what? Yeah. What do you do?
Because that's what I think, I think so often, I think back, my first long-term relationship, we didn't get married, but we were together 7.5 years. And it took about 4 years also for him to break walls, throw things at me, wake me up, accuse me of cheating. Like, I mean, it didn't get to the, stage 4, but it was going in that direction. And it took 4 years. We were best friends. We had a great time. And then his father got sick with cancer, and then he just went off the edge. But here's the thing that I think for him in every relationship that I always had a problem with, and all those toxic ones, is I remember thinking to myself, well, it's been good and this isn't good, but maybe we can go back to being good again. Do I give him another chance? We all make mistakes. but there is that level of like being hit becomes a no go. There's no coming back from that. But I think when you're in it, you're in my mind, I remembered to how the things had been, and I was holding on to that with the hopes, let's go back to that. Maybe if I explain it to him in a way that makes sense to him. This was the logic, right? If I explain it in a way that makes sense and he understands, maybe he won't do this anymore. But once somebody has crossed that boundary, now it's okay. Now it's like there's permission for them to treat us badly.
Mm-hmm. And I remember that when that happened, and I tried to talk to him about that afterwards, the next day or something, he told me, well, I never hit anybody before you, so you must have really messed up. So, I mean, that's not normal. This is not my normal behavior. So you should not push me that far. I don't understand really what happened. I mean, you did clearly wrong, so you get the consequence of your acts. It's like, okay, I get it. I'm to blame. I'm at fault. This is just deserved. Okay, I can live with that. I'm sorry to have broken our boundaries and our agreement. How do you go from there? Well, I remember having thought, shall we consult someone about that? And when he heard that thought, he said, no, what are you going to tell them? Or whoever it would be, I don't know. Well, that I broke a contract and that we end up beating at each other. And he said, that will never happen again. Don't need to bother. It's okay. Yeah. Forget about that. And we went to sleep. And the next day, I was still thinking about that. He probably was as well, but he did not mention anything about that ever again. And I remember that now, fast forward 6 years later, in the meantime, we had many more of those episodes. Not a lot, but I mean, probably 5 or 10 of those episodes within the 6 next years. And then when I went to report against him, that was my last attempt to leave with the help of the police after having reported domestic violence. The first story I told was this one. Because the first question they ask is, did he hit you? There is so much more than hitting in an abusive relationship. Yes. So much more.
Yes.
So much more. The emotional abuse, the belittling, the not trusting each other, the lying, the cheating, the breach of trust. That comes before hitting at each other.
The control, right?
The control, absolutely.
Yeah.
And these things did not count on the report. Only the instances when I got hit. Or when I hit, because I also did hit back. There is a time when you really go at each other.
And I wonder, I mean, I speak to people from all over the world, and it seems like it's a common thread, no matter where you are, no matter where you experience it, there is not much support for the person that's dealing with the abuse. It's like, let me believe the abuser. It's almost like the victim or the person who's being abused has to prove, what's going on. And, people don't seem to understand how hard it is for us to even go to the police and go share what's going on. They have no idea how much we had to amp ourselves up and push ourselves to go, because every part of us doesn't want to go get them in trouble. We feel guilty. We feel ashamed that we have to go and get help. So the fact that we're there already says a lot about the situation, but people are not trained. Police are not trained in how to help people and really get them the support that they need. I actually had someone from the local domestic violence hotline. Finally, my second relationship went and helped me get an order of protection. And I'll never forget the look on her face when she said, tell me some of the things that happened. And I remember the look of like horror
Absolutely.
on her face. And I was just saying it like I was talking about the weather, like, oh, well, middle of the night woke me up, pull the sheets off, turn the lights on, and just like rattling off all these things and strangled me twice, like, just going through all the things. And she's like, do you realize how much of like how violent that is? How much, but when you're in it, you're just like, I wasn't even sharing those parts because I was just in survival mode. So I have a question. We're getting a little short on time. We only have a few more minutes, but I'd love to, what would be one thing that you would like to share with someone who maybe is listening right now and thinking, I've been having this facade of everything being okay, but I am dying on the inside and I just don't know what to do. What would you tell someone who's dealing with that right now?
I would say reach out to Stephanie, reach out to me, talk to someone. The fact of speaking up, speaking out loud, telling your situation, sharing where you are at for real, and you do not sugarcoat. You can say, well, I got hit and it's my fault because this is how victims think anyway. But say the fact of hearing yourself saying that, the wake-up call is already big. And from that point, you make the appropriate decisions that you can change. A decision is not forever. That is a fallacy of our mind, that we stick to our decision, our marriage vow, or whatever it is. We do not need to do that. If you feel stuck, you feel limited, you feel that you do not have the choice, again, you do have the choice. Reach out to someone, start to speak. And when I say someone, I'm very, very, very precise. A professional who knows domestic violence and who got out of it.
Yes.
Not someone from the church who wants only one thing, is to keep you with your husband / wife / significant other now and forever, for eternity. Someone who actually understands what you're going through. This is why I say someone like Stephanie, someone like me, we are many out there who can hear you, help you. And not everybody is going to ask you for money for that. Some, of course, and some not. So dare to get yourself out there and speak. Ask for a free 15 minutes consultation already to say what's going on. The fact of saying it, God, you're going to wake up big time.
And we're just closing up here, but to just inspire you some more. I mean, Gemma's now in a beautiful, happy relationship. She now has this as her reason for being. I mean, she helps so many people share and really break the silence around abuse. So thank you so much. Let's throw up all your social media stuff. If anybody would like to get in touch with Gemma, please, please, please feel free to reach out to Gemma. We've got her website, her Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Reach out to her, listen to her podcast, get more inspired, because you were put here for more than just suffering. So thank you so much for everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much to Gemma for all of the great knowledge you imparted and also for sharing your story of overcoming. And for all of you, we'll see you next week with Steve. Have a wonderful week. See you later.